Hi there, welcome to a step-by-step. In this one it's going to be quite an unusual one because I've not actually done a skin tone colour wheel before, and somebody's asked me to do one. I'm going to use the skin tones that I normally use, which is yellow ochre, warm red. So you've got your yellow ochre there, your warm red, and then your basic sort of ultramarine blue. Right, so like I say, these are the primary colours. Then you've got your secondary colours, which I'm going to be using, which is like sort of this. So these are your secondary colours as well. So primaries and secondary colours, but it's not as easy as that when you try and mix the colours together on your portrait. I mean, the principle is there, but you have to use different pastels to create the correct effect that you're looking for. But I'm going to simplify this colour wheel on the technique that I do. Right, so let's say we've got yellow there, yellow. Then we've got red there. And then we've got blue there. Then we've got red and yellow makes orange. Red and blue makes purple. So that's going to be P for purple or violet. And then you've got blue and yellow makes green. Now that's the colours I use, that's olive green. So that's your colours in there. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put the white in. That's what I normally do, isn't it? So let's just do that. Then I'm going to put white and then go to mid-tone. So you set in the middle of your colour wheel there. That part there is going to be a mid-tone, then it's going to go to shadow. So I'm going to do that on all the segments. I just want to give you an idea of what a colour wheel is, because as you mix, you see richer colours are going to be on the edge, then it's going to be more desaturated as it goes to the centre, and the centre will be black or brown or black, round about that colour. So when you mix your secondaries to colour, the secondary colours with the primaries on the opposite, the complementary colour. So your complementary of yellow is purple, the complementary of red is green, and the complementary of blue is orange. So when you mix them together, it makes a browny blacky colour. Now if that were paint, to make black, proper black, you'd mix all three colours together. Right, so I'm going to start off with yellow ochre. This is the Carbotella yellow. It's what I normally use, portraits. So I'm just going to glaze that over there for a little bit. So I'm just putting a bit of that in. And then I'm going to use the white just to make that the lighter area. Right. Okay. Now purple. This is not quite purple, this is more bluey purple, so might have to mix a bit of red in with it just to make it proper purple. Because I use that as a purple, but then add a bit more red to it. So I'm just going to use a little bit of red just to make that more violety. That's it, look. So that's your purple, which is your complementary of your yellow. Now your red, the warm red normally is what you use for portraits. I know I use a cold red, but I'll discuss that with you later, because I'm going to use the cold colours around these shadows here. Because I tend to use colder colours, mainly for shadows, but sometimes that's different as well. So it's ever so difficult to actually explain to you exactly how I feel. There's no easy way of doing it, but I'm just making this up as I go along, like I say. So that's your purple, so I'm just making that a little bit more vibrant. roughly like that, that's it. So blue, usually use ultramarine blue. Now if this was an oil painting, that's why I'd probably just use those three colours. And a bit of lemon yellow if I need it to make it vibrant. So basically the same whatever I do, watercolour, pastels or oils, or even acrylic. I've done that a bit in my time, so all the same. So whatever you're into, if you're into oil paintings, this would actually apply to that as well. Now the opposite of blue is orange. We haven't done the green yet, but I'll do that in a sec. So we'll put the orange in now. But basically that would be actually yellow ochre. Regarding a portrait, I'd use yellow ochre and the warm red to make the orangey colour. So let's mix that rather than just use orange, because it's more, you know, it's more in line with what I'm doing, isn't it, really, when you think about it. It's excusing me my pregnant pauses, because I'm trying to switch off while I'm doing this as well. So that's probably, you know, that's going to be a vibrant colour of your skin tone, but you see what I do is mix green with that, you see. Green or blue to make it desaturated and match your skin tone. So opposite of red is green, so the complementary colour of red is green. So I usually use olive green, that sort of colour, when I'm doing, when I'm neutralising the skin tone. So let's just put that in. Put a bit more, excuse me, put a bit more light on that green. Right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go over, now this, you know, when you neutralise colours, use the complementary, so this is going to show you how I do that. Hopefully, I mean, you know, it's very difficult to act, there's nothing set so easy in stone or black and white, so many variations in skin tone. But if I just put a little bit of, I'm just going to put that and then just blend it off into mid-tone, like that. Now this is your shadow of your skin tone, if it were just red. But you see, if it were more yellow, you'd have a bit of yellow ochre with that. And that would make it more of a tanny colour. So that's your shadow there, look. And I'll do the same here, green. So I'm just going to work on the red and the green to start with. So then I'll go into the mid-tone there. This is, see, that would be your skin, you see, but this could be a shadow as well. Obviously you don't have that much green in skin tone, but I'm just showing you how it applies with the complementary colour. There's no other way of doing it. Now you see there's darker areas of skin tone, that's when I use something different, which is a cold red, which is, this is the like a purpley red from, that's what they call it anyway, but I call it like an Elysium Crimson from Conti Paris, and that's number 19. And then what I use, find it, is the actual Caran d'Ache pencil 719. I found that those two together makes really dark colour. So what I'm going to do is make that here. So I'm going to put the green, dark green, I'm going to use the colder green. So the reason why it's colder is because it's going towards the blue. The reason why that's a warm green is going more or less towards that. Now this, but I'm just trying to use the pencils I use to give you some idea of how I do it. So now again here, that would be apply there just to make it dark. So that's what I'd probably do, is make it a little bit darker like that. And then I'd use this this green, this red, to make it a little bit darker. That's how I do my dark skin tones. But that is not set in stone because that might be a little bit warmer, so you add a bit of yellow ochre to it, or lemon yellow. So you see how difficult it is to try and explain to you. So what I'm going to do now is put red there, mid-tone, but then I'm just going to go and blend in that colder red, like so. So sometimes that is what's needed, because if there's a warm light shining on an object, the shadows tend to be colder, and the opposite applies. If it's a cold light, it's warmer shadows. So that's what I've researched and what I believe is true. So what I'm doing there is just a rich. Obviously I'd use rich Caran d'Ache colours on that to make it really rich, but I'm just showing you the principle of what's going on with the colour wheel, and hopefully it'll make a little bit of sense. So again, with the green I'd use the, so if that were grass, I would use that red with it, red and green, will make a darker shadow. So I'm just going to put that going into the mid-tone. So I'm using colder in the middle just to make the shadow. I hope this is making a little bit of sense. It's ever so difficult to explain, so you can appreciate it. I'm trying just to have a go here, just to see if I can make some sense of it. Right, so yellow ochre then. Now yellow ochre, if it were rich colour, I'd put a bit of lemon yellow in it. So let's just do that. So let's put a little bit of lemon yellow in there. So for rich colour, I'll add a bit of a lemon yellow in with it. See, I don't know where this is going, so it might just change as you know, like I'm just making this up as I go along. So we'll see what happens with it. Okay, oh, yellow ochre. Now if I mix a purpley blue with that, so this needs a little bit more red because it's actually a bit too blue, but I haven't got a purple. That's it. Then you can blend that in with it. So it's the purple colour. So that's how that is. Now the blue. See, in skin tones, blue's used very subtly, but again I'm just using this with the principles of the colour wheel. So you have to bear with me on this, just so it gives you an idea. So I'm going to use the orange, those two colours together, because that's what I'd probably use when I'm doing my portraits. So mixing those two together there will create a shadow for that blue. Sometimes I would use that orange if it were a tanned colour, you know, I'd probably use orange and a blue colour to create shadows. Like I say, everything, I'll use the orange here just to show you, look, the orange and blue mixes together. I mean, I use a different blue for when I do eyes, you see, because that's like a more of a warmer blue, it goes towards the yellow. So it's like a little bit warmer. So I sometimes use that as well, just to create the shadow. So it's a case of trying different blues what you've got in your kit, really. It's so difficult, like I say, it's so difficult for me to explain exactly, you know, there's no easy way for me to just say you do this and you've done it. The only thing I can say to you, the most easiest thing to think of, is if you use these three colours. That's why it's really nice when you do the underdrawing, because you can basically use these colours and that secondary colour for your skin, which will be red, but you might mix a bit more blue or a bit more yellow with that. But those three colours for your skin tone, you know, sorry, the ultramarine. So ultramarine blue, the olive green, warm red, and yellow ochre. Now that would be, you know, the basic sort of structure. And when I do the underdrawing, I like to use them because it's really good. Because you can get most of your subtleties with that as well. But it's when you. The thing is, it's not just about using these, it's about chroma as well, making it sort of more vibrant, which is another thing. This is on top of that, which might have a look at this in a sec. But anyway, let's just carry on with this then. So you've got your purpley going in there, but obviously it's not purple enough, so I'm putting a bit of red in it just to make it more purple. And then you put your yellow ochre with that, and then that will make it like a shadowy colour. Let's see if I can get a deeper shadow there, so it's more purple than you're mixing. Right, but you can see what's happening. It's so difficult to get that depth of shadow you want when you're using blue and orange together. It's all right in eyes because it's very subtle, but if I wanted a deeper, so let's put some deeper blue in there. So if we use the ultramarine blue, because that's a light blue, so we're using the ultramarine blue now. So, but dark ultramarine blue, just try and get that shadow. But you can see what happens when you mix a bit of orange with that. It still don't go dark, what you can see. So what you'd have to do then is use brown. Now this is getting confusing, I know, but this is how I do pastels, is that brown, like there's a bit of red in it, and it could be a little bit orangey brown as well. You know, it could. How can you put this into terms that makes it understandable? But well, there's more yellow and red than there's blue in that to make that brown. So when you mix that with the blue, it creates like a dark shadow. So that's how I do, what I use when I do the shadow of blue, mostly is like using that brown and the blue. So I'm working on the shadows first, and then what we'll do is the chroma. I'll try and make the chroma, that more chroma on the edges, so I can show you how I make it more vibrant. So to create that purple, a dark purple, again, which is very difficult, because if you put yellow but if you mix that in oil painting, it will go black. But in here, with pastels, it's very difficult to get that tone correct. So what I suggest to do in that instance is again, I would mix a bit of brown maybe on that purple, and a bit more red, and a bit blue, which is a purpley colour. So I'd slowly do that, just add a little bit of brown into that purple, just to create a darker colour. Now you see, for the greens, I hope this is not making it more complicated. It's just, I'm just trying to explain to you how I create shadows. But that's how I do darker skin tones. Normally they don't go any darker than that unless it's really, you know, like under nostrils and stuff. But under nostrils, what I'd do, say if that was under nostrils, I use a bit of brown. See how it's darkening it up there a lot. And then I'd use a bit of a purpley blue. So you're mixing these other colours outside of it, you see, together to get, so it's not all a case of just using your complementary colours. Sometimes with pastels, with watercolours, you'll be able to do this. You mix green and red together, it'll make a perfect shadow. But with pastels, you have to add other things to it. So maybe this is a good thing I'm doing here, so you can make sure you understand to get these darker shadows. Again, to get that darker purpley colour, probably again mix a bit of brown with it, because I ain't got a purple which is perfect, so I'm using that blue and a bit of red, and again brown, just to get that darker. You can see that that's okay. Right, so the orange then. So let's put some pigment down, because obviously when you're doing darker shadows, sometimes you need a little bit more pigment in it. So the orange, opposite of orange is blue, but if I just, with pastels, again, if I use the oils and mix orange and blue together, it will create a nice sort of browny, dark browny, going toward black. But if you wanted it, so if it were oils, you wanted it darker, you just add a little bit more red in it. So you have to keep playing about with it. So in pastels, so if I use the dark ultramarine, but you can see what happens to that orange when I put dark ultramarine on it. It's not actually, it's a subtlety, depends how dark it is you're wanting. But you see, when you're doing flesh tones, like if it's a tan colour, there's going to be darker areas, so you probably have to use a combination of these, you know, going towards here and mixing in with it. So what I tend to would do if it was an orange colour, again I would use, I would try the red and green together first to try and create the shadow, and then what I'd do is merge that into the orange, mix the orange in with it, so you're getting the darkness of your pastel you want. Maybe use the other green, colder green, the other red. So you're using your cold red and cold red and cold green. Sorry, I'm going all over the place here. And then what I'd do with that then is slowly but surely blend in the orange with it, mix it in with it so it looks like the natural shadow of orange. You see, just to put blue in it, you won't be able to do it. You can see how that's created a better looking shadow. Again, make that a little a bit more pigment on there. Now you see that is too vibrant for a mid-tone, so what I'd blue with it, look, so if I put blue and orange together, it'll create it, it'll neutralise it, so that made it more of a neutral colour, which is better for the mid-tone. So this richer colour needs to be on the end there. And I'll do the chroma bits in a minute, but I'll just concentrate on the shadow, so I'm just going to put that in there like that. Okay, so it should really be yellow ochre and that together, really mixed together. You can see it's, you know, for skin tone that would be far too sort of vivid. So with that, again, you can neutralise it with a bit of blue. But what I'm going to use, I think, is probably, no, we'll leave it at that, we'll see what happens with it. But this is just the colour wheel. Obviously skin tones are all in between these colours, so I'm just trying to bear with me, because I'm trying to create something here which I've not seen regarding skin tones and pastels, that is, as well, because pastels work differently than when you use, like I say, oil paint or watercolour. So yellow ochre, just put a bit of purple in there. My camera just stopped running for a minute there, I didn't realise, so I did is put the yellow ochre down and then the purple, then just mixed a bit of purple with it. But you see, when you're doing skin tones, you're working constantly adding different colours, just to subtle things up, you know, a bit more blue here, a bit more, so you get to know which of the three primaries which mainly use in the skin tones, which is these three there, and then anything to make that darker, then you'd have to use the other colours I mentioned. So because it's pastels and it works slightly different to oils when you're trying to mix colours, so this is hopefully going to be helpful for you. So I'm just going to make that shadow a little bit darker. I'll mix purple, so I'll use blue and red together, and then that would create that shadow there. Right, so green, olive green normally is the colour I use for, in oils I'd mix yellow and blue, yellow ochre and ultramarine blue to get the green, or you could try the yellow ochre or lemon yellow. It depends on what the skin tone is. It's so many variables, so I'm just trying to basically give you an idea, but this is not set in stone, you know, it changes with the skin tones you use, you're up against. But I'm hoping this gives you the basic sort of an idea of how colours, you know, how you can mix colours together with pastels. I don't know if this is making sense, but I hope so for you. I'm trying my hardest, but I tend to let these things just happen, like I've mentioned in all my videos, because I've got used to knowing what works, but I'm trying to break this down so you can understand where I'm coming from. So normally with the shadows I use a darker green, because obviously that's not dark enough. So you'd have to try and find a green, another green which is dark enough, and a darker red to make a darker shadow of that green, or subtlety of that green, because you're going to use the opposite, which again complementary colour, which is red. So if it was clothes you were doing, you know, you'd have to do that, use a bit of red, with it to see whether it works, or if it's grass, you know, if you landscape. But again, if I were wanting to make that really black, I'd use brown and the ultramarine blue again, so that one there. So mix those two together, creating a darker shade, and then merge that into it, and then just mix a bit of green in with it to make it, you know, like merge with it. So the yellow don't look dark enough, so again you'd have to, you know, use your brown again. It's a great combination, brown and blue, especially in oils. If you're glazing, if you glaze with brown, ultramarine is a lovely shadow. You can just glaze with it, and it just, whatever colour you're making a shadow, it seems to just work. That's a little tip for you in oils or watercolour. There you go. So that's what I'd use. So in the centres there, because it's pastels, I'm tending to use them colours there, brown and blue, to make a darker area, then mix it in with other colours. So that's how different it is when you know, like I say, when you mix with oils or watercolour. So pastels are a totally different beast, so you have to treat it differently. Now it's not just about the actual tones of it, or see, it's not saturated. Sometimes the skin is really saturated, it's bright and fresh. So what I do to make this bright is use a different brand which is more rich in pigment. So I'd probably use these, which are Caran d'Ache. Now you've seen me in the portraits use these colours, which are ready mix. All that is that that red and that yellow mixed together. You can see how it looks. Look on there. It's just that's got more red in it, and that's got less, and that's got more yellow ochre. So there's just skin tones. What I tend to use. They're actually called flesh tints in Caran d'Ache. One 5%, one 10%, and one's called flesh tint, I think. So, but for this colour wheel, you could go back to these basic sort of colours. So actually it's that one, that's a warm red, that one there, that's lemon yellow. So you use lemon yellow, more of a lemon yellow that is. So it's similar to that. So to make this more chroma on the edges, you'd add more richer colour, more pigment, and I'd use a little bit of lemon yellow, and then I'd use the yellow ochre from Caran d'Ache. You'd have to experiment with the pencils you've got. I can only explain to you what I've got set, but you can buy these singly, you don't have to buy the whole kit. So you can mix that together to make it to more of a vibrant yellow, richer. But to get the flesh tone, it's going to be a mixture of these two together. But again, what I'm doing here is just giving you an idea how the complementary works and how difficult it is to get those really deep shadows. So that's why I just stick to using red and green for the shadows, and then just merge it in with the other sort of tones. Or then I use brown and blue as well, or brown and purple. You've seen me do that in my videos. So mainly that's for the really dark areas. So this red, this is a vermilion red from Caran d'Ache, to get that sort of vibrancy. Use that sort of and that colour there. I'll sum all this up at the end. It's not exactly what I thought it was going to turn out like, but it's very difficult to try and explain to you, because it's how difficult it is to mix the colours with pastels. Probably be easier for an oil painting. I was showing you how I mix that, but just there it is. You know, we're working with pastels, so I'm just trying to explain to you how things are now. In Caran d'Ache, there's different whites as well. There's the Chinese white, which is a little bit yellower, and the Azurite white, which is really fresh white. So for portraits mainly, I'll probably go for the Chinese white, less harsh, so you could sort of merge that in with it a little bit. Again, you're just using your finger just to merge it in. But again, a skin tone would be a mixture of these colours here, and then a bit of blues and greens. So you're using all these colours to create the shadow you're wanting. So again, it's just trying to explain to you how I'll achieve this. So this is just going to be a little bit, try and get that chroma on that, using a more richer white and then a richer orange. What I'd use, just for this colour wheel, I use this orange, but obviously to be a mixture of yellow ochre and the red, or you could use a bit of lemon yellow with it if it's more zingy. But again, this is, skin tones are subtle, more subtle. It's a blend of all these together. Even the blue here, I mean that's ultramarine blue, but there's also like a Prussian blue, which is more towards a bit more warmer colour. Now I use a combination sometimes of both. Now if it's a picture which is outside, been taken outside, you tend to find that the Prussian blue mixes in and makes the colours you want. So again, you have to try different blues to see which looks best and how to get the skin tone. Also got reflected light on your image as well, which could change things. But this is just a basic idea of how pastels are so difficult to create shadows and subtleties by using the complementary colours. But this is the way I do it, is just mixing other things with it, just to get, it's just all it is really is a basic structure and idea, mixing the complementary colours with the primaries. Sometimes you just got to use a different approach, and that's just through experience. So you've got three, all you got to remember is you've got three colours: your red, your blue and your yellow, and it's finding which yellow's best, which blue's best and which red's best. Then if you can't get the shadow of those, just use burnt umber and ultramarine, or a purpley blue, and mix that in with the colour, and that will create a shadow. It's like I mentioned before, I use blue and orange for the colour of the eyes, because the subtleties are so nice, because when you look at the colour of eyes, you can see oranges and all sorts in it, but the shadow of that, it might not work with blue and orange. So you needed to put a little bit of, again, brown and blue. So you'll probably see me do that in my pictures. So that's where the brown and blue is a real magic together, rather than using black. You see, you don't want to be using black in skin tones, it just makes things mucky. In oils, I know there's a technique where you just use black, yellow ochre and red, which is Zorn technique or something, fine. But for me, this is more subtle. You get more subtlety from it. So basically, to get a chroma, more chroma, is to add like lemon yellow to it. Even with that green, if I had a little bit of a lemon yellow with that green, it will lift the green up a bit, make it more chroma. Because when you're trying to get something that looks a sense of realism to it, you're trying to get the chroma as well as the actual values right, because you might get your values right, but all your highlights and your midtones are flat because you haven't really got the chroma right, the richness of it. So it's getting a balance of both. Really, that's it. So what I can say really with that. Right, so all I'm doing with that is putting a little bit of Chinese white in with it, just to right. So I'll just probably try and sum this up. It's not gone to what I thought it would go, because it's so difficult to try and just do everything to look like skin tones, because when you're trying to explain the colour wheel, because you never see just pure green in the skin, you never see just pure yellow, you never see pure blue, or you might see a pure wet red, pink in the cheeks and that, but you never get just red. There's all sorts of subtle, same with any of these colours. So when you're doing portraits, it's a mixture of all these. Again, I'll go through it again, just to go through. So actually 3 colours, your basic colours. You always remember these basic colours. It's ultramarine blue, yellow ochre and warm red. And then you're using the green to neutralise that red, and also mixing green with the other colours. You just have to keep combining these colours till you get the shade right. So if there's a shadow, a subtlety in the yellow, you just keep adding little bits of each of these colours because they all intermingle. So if you go too green, you can always bring it back, you see, to more red, and it just plays up and down. It just keeps going from one to another when you're just using 3 colours. So it makes it quite easy after a while, because you know if you've gone too far one way, you can just add one of the other colours and it'll bring it back. So you're mixing on the board as you go along. That's what I've mentioned before. If you can find a colour that is actually very similar to what you want, use that first, then use a combination of these colours on top, and then that will make it subtler to what you want. Now that would work in some instance, but then in another instance you might need a bit more vividness, a bit more chroma. So you'd have to probably use the richer colours, you know, the Caran d'Ache ones, or something that you've got something which is higher pigment. It's a case of playing about with what you've got, really. I mean, I could make these richer by pressing on more and putting more white in with them, but there's only limited to what you can do, and that only comes with experience, really, as to knowing what you can do with the set you've got. Yeah, so I hope that's made some sense. I apologise if it's made you even more confused. Now it sounds confusing, but the more you do this, the more it becomes quite straightforward. You know, so let me just get a scrap piece of paper, So say if I wanted, I've just got a bit of scrap here, look. So if I wanted a bit of, I've got this picture of Emma Watson there, and I wanted to create a bit of that skin tone. So what I'd use, I'd go in with the white first. Now if it's brighter, you press on a little bit more. If it's a bit of brighter highlight, if it's mid-tone, you just not putting so much on. Reason being, see all those little specks and everything else there, that creates your texture for the skin, because skin's not smooth. So that's why I like to go a bit lighter. So you're actually using the colour of the board that shines through these layers, and you're using that for your skin tone. That's why I'm not really into the idea of doing pan pastels, because that would fill in the tooth too much. But I can't really comment because I've not used them yet, but it's put me off the idea of it. So if I were doing a step, I'll just put a little bit of yellow ochre in lot first, like that, mix it in. Now then I'd use the warm red. If some areas need to be more subtler, you know, you're using a mixture of all these. And then let me get my blue while we're done with it. And then for subtle shadows, you know, you might use that bit of blue like that. Then you think, oh, that just looks a little bit too blue. So then you add a little bit of red with it, making it that purpley colour. And then you've got, you go back with your yellow ochre look, and then you've got that subtle colour, because you made a purple with the blue and red, and then you've created this sort of colour here, the yellow ochre and the purple together. You can see it's very similar, but it's less, you know, deep as that. But when you're doing skin tones, it's a lot lighter. So that's what you do, you see. But then you look at some shadow areas with there, just to go with that. So let's have a look. So what I'd use, just mix, got my dark green there, look. So you put a bit of dark green in. Then you've got your cold red, but then you might find that that looks a little bit, you know, not quite right. It's a bit more of an orangey colour, so you just mix a bit of the yellow ochre with it. So again, you're using the colours again, you know, your three colours and that green, and then you might find there's a bit of like a bluey tinge to it, so more blue, so you just add a little bit of blue there, or a bit more yellow in certain areas, so you add a little more yellow. And then you might think, oh, it's too dark, so I need to lighten it up a bit, so you just put a little bit of light, you know, a bit of white in there. And then you might think, oh, that's gone a bit too white, so then you'd add a bit of yellow in it. Because you know, when you use your white, always use a little bit of yellow if you can with it. It makes it less stark. Sometimes I use a lemon yellow with the white, just to create a little bit more subtlety. So basically that's it, really. It's been a very difficult one to explain, so it might seem it's all over the place, but like I said, when you sum it up, you're basically using these colours here, look, when you're using your flesh colours. But then if you want more chroma, you use sort of richer brands, you know, we've got more pigment in. I hope you've got something from this to take away with you, to make sense of it. But you see, but the main thing that I'm getting at is that pastels are so difficult to mix when you're using complementary colours. Some mix well, like the dark green and dark red, but your oranges, like I say, your orange and your blues, to make those really deep shadows, are very difficult to do. So just to sum up, always use a bit of brown with the blue or darker blue to create the shadow when you're using that combination of complementary colour. Same when you're using purple and yellow. Well, I hope you got something from that. It's been very difficult for me to actually explain to you because there's so much subtlety that goes into doing skin tones, and actually when you try and break it down into a colour wheel, because obviously you don't see that much green and all these colours, it's a mixture of them all together. But it gives you some idea of the principle of the colour wheel. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate the support. Till next time, thanks very much. Bye for now. Bye.